Hey everyone, welcome back. You are listening to 한국어천재 on TBS EFM 101.3 and we are hanging out here together with Matt because it is time for Food Talk. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Kayla.
I always look forward. You guys, I know we all talk about this because throughout the week, we'll always get onto topics of food. And then a lot of people throughout the week will be like, oh, we should talk to Matt about this, or we should ask Matt about this. And so I feel like a lot of people really look forward to Mondays with you.
Well, good, because I look forward to Mondays with all of the genies and with you as well, because tell you what, this is a great show. This is a great show.
Thank you, Matt. You're just saying it. You're just being nice here. But we did cover a lot last week, but it's almost like we covered nothing at the same time.
Sure.
We started off talking about veganism and vegetarianism here in Korea, and we got so wrapped up just in the concept of it and our thoughts on it. We actually didn't really get to talk about like too much about it last week.
Yeah, we kind of circled, we talked about all the things that people talk about when you talk about veganism, because it is such a big thing, right? It's not just the food. Like one of our comments was saying, right? Like it also, it pertains to other things beyond just what we consume in our mouths, but also things like makeup, clothing, accessories. I think it's really telling. Do you know the designer Virgil Abloh?
No, I've never heard.
He's a big, I can't say of course I can't say his brand,
Of
but
course, yeah.
a very big name in fashion, and he's kind of part of this new kind of wave of designers, like, more of our generation.
Yeah.
And he's the creative director of one of the world's biggest fashion houses now. And what he's saying is just that there's a new definition of luxury. And a lot of that comes down to not just, the quality of the material or the craftsmanship, but also kind of the corporate like principles. Like what does that company stand for? And I think that's something that's increasingly important to consumers, right? Like aligning yourself with a company, giving them your money and knowing that they're not completely evil.
Exactly. Yeah, I even feel better because when I go shopping, there is a brand I really like. 진짜 마음에 드는 브랜드 있는데 at that place there, you have this 재활용 kind of like recyclable thing that you can do where you can donate your clothes there. And just knowing that they're going to kind of properly dispose or, take care of them and then redistribute them, just kind of having a good system. I feel a little bit like, oh, at least this brand is kind of helping in some way here. I mean, just these little things, it always plays into the consumerism mindset, right?
And so I think there are companies here in Korea on the food side of things as well that are embracing veganism. I think they're understanding that a lot more people are looking at it, maybe not necessarily taking it on as your daily, kind of like as your daily diet, but as a viable option from time to time.
For sure.
One of Korea's largest supermarket chains, like I'm talking about one of the largest, recently they launched an in-house vegan mayonnaise.
Oh, that's going to be a game changer.
Yeah. I think vegan mayonnaise is one of those things that, if done right, can actually be better than the original sometimes. Like just because it can be a little bit lighter, a little bit tangier. Yeah.
That's the whole purpose. I don't want any goopy glue. I want that tang. I want that little something to play off that sort of vinegary kind of flavor in there.
Right. And then not all locations, not yet, but as of this year, most of the big convenience store brands as well are now offering things like vegan toshirak as well.
Yes, I do see a lot of things like the 채식주의자, like 샐러드 or like 도시락 or these different kinds of, options for people. And for me as well, it's nice because a lot of these things are easy to eat on the go. They're not a full platter of things that I have to sit down. I can literally just walk and eat them if I have to.
And it all kind of works really well because I think we touched upon this last week, the difference between kind of like vegan Western food and vegan Korean food, in the sense that, yes, Seoul, the rest of Korea, doesn't have nearly the number of vegan restaurants, cafes, brands, and supermarkets that you might have in the West. However, Korean food itself is much easier to veganize than the majority of Western food is, I think.
I think so. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about last week, but ran out because there are actually a lot of ways that you can adapt to meet the standards of veganism. They're a little bit stricter. So like, what are some ways that people can kind of just, switch things out, switch them up?
A lot of things can be switched out. So, of course, there are the meat dishes, right? Like meat is meat. And you can switch them out for whatever you want in terms of, just you want to use that same, like, say, like bulgogi marinade or like 제육볶음 marinade. Tubu, of course, is the no-brainer.
Chef kisses.
But also hearty things like, gosari. From from your favorite was 육개장, your
Yes,
Jeju style 육개장.
my 육개장. I love it.
Is a great stand-in for that kind of like stringy braised meat.
Yeah.
And then anything else that's kind of like hearty and potatoes stand up really well, and they soak up that marinade really, really well. And then you have other things here in Korea as well that kind of are in that tubu-like category. Things like 도토리묵.
Oh, 도토리묵.
Acorn jelly.
I don't like 도토리묵. I'm not a fan of it. I'm one of the weird people who kind of just, it has no taste to me. It has no taste. I'm sorry. I don't like it. It's not that I won't eat it. It's just, I don't crave it ever.
I also don't blame you, knowing your Midwestern roots. Like having like anything Jello-like in a savory application, you might be carrying a little bit of childhood trauma there.
Probably. That's probably deep-seated childhood trauma.
Right. But then also within the tubu category as well, soybeans, they're magical because there's so many other things that come out of it. I think one thing that is overlooked, especially for people who are just kind of getting into Korean food, is 콩비지.
콩비지, what is that?
콩비지 is great. So it's basically the kind of after you make soy milk, right?
Yeah.
It's the byproduct of making soy milk. It's all the ground up beans after the water has been extracted. And when you cook it, it kind of almost takes on a ricotta cheese like texture.
Okay, you got me intrigued here.
Yeah. So imagine kind of like a fluffy texture. Also, but it's also still very beany. So imagine like a fluffier version of, say, like refried beans. And they're a delicious thing to kind of toss into just about any kind of soup base. You can make it spicy. You can do it in a kind of a clear broth. It's something that we eat all the time in our home as well. Because one of the things is that we go and get our tubu from the local market. And that stuff is amazing. And we always pick up a little bit of 콩비지 while we're there. And it has a very short shelf life, but freezes very, very well.
So you can kind of just whip it out whenever you need it here.
Right. So we just make a big batch of soup, and then whatever leftovers we have, we kind of portion it off, toss it in the freezer, and that way we have a quick, Tuesday night dinner at any time, and it can be easily made completely vegan.
Oh, could you make desserts out of this too? Is that possible?
I'm sure you could. I've never tried. You might have to blend it a little bit finer, but I know there are a ton of vegan baking dishes out there that use like bean purees.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Especially because it's so neutral tasting as well. It's just very kind of has a just very, kind of like neutral taste, and it takes on the flavor of anything you want to add to it. And speaking of baking as well, that is a huge advantage that Korean cuisine has over Western cuisine in terms of veganizing it, in the sense that almost all traditional Korean cooking fats and oils are vegan. We don't use that much butter.
That's true.
In Korea, we don't use that much, say, like pork fat or beef fat in our cuisine. Yeah. And so as a result, even things like traditional Korean desserts, if you substitute, say, the honey, if that's something that you're avoiding as a vegan, easily you can make most Korean desserts as vegan. Bingsu is probably the one that's going to be a little bit tougher just because of the dairy aspect to it.
Yeah, I was just going to say the condensed milks.
Right. And so many of the more, I guess, like the higher end bingsu places you go to, they're making their ice out of milk to begin with.
That's true, yeah.
Right.
It's
but if you're
literally
doing it at
shaved
home,
milk.
Right. But if you're doing it at home, there are plenty of substitutes to be had.
And I feel like that was a point that you made that I just kind of had a moment with here, is that most of when we fry things, it's usually in like sunflower oil or like different types of what else I've seen,
soybean
oil,
canola oil.
The canolas and all that thing. I've really almost never seen anyone kind of going around with a stick of margarine, or a thing of vat of fat here, bacon fat or whatever.
Yeah,
I really don't see it.
Yeah, most of the butter applications in Korea are used in, say, like Western style baking.
Yeah.
Or in punshik. Right.
That's true. Now, we have a ton of comments about this. Apparently, veganism is a hot topic here. Let's take a look at some of these. So, Rai says, I used to be a vegan when I was a child, but not until I had meat introduced to me. So, I feel like, when you're growing up, you kind of just adapt to whatever is being fed to you. And that's nothing bad about that, And if you decide to change it halfway through, that's totally your prerogative. It's not a bad thing either way. Neo, I'm going to say Bic or BIC, one of the two. Neo Bic says, there's so many different ways of eating vegetables. You'll find something you like. I didn't like veggies back then too.
This is a big one for me because for me, meat always kind of tastes like meat, but vegetables can really taste like anything. There are the spectrum of flavor that plant-based foods have is just so much wider than what meat has. And of course, meat has something that vegetables can't reproduce, but vegetables have so much to offer on their own.
I agree. And there's actually a vegan restaurant that I've gone to that serves cauliflower, but it tastes, I kid you not, like shrimp tacos. Like they whip this up with sauces and the way they grill it and just the texture that they make out of it.
Sure.
It tastes like shrimp. It blows my mind. I'm like, how did you do that? And I'm like, what's in it? They're like, cauliflower. I'm like, pardon? What? And so it's really, you can do so much
Cauliflower,
with it. Yeah.
the shrimp of the land.
The land-loping shrimp. I love it. Now, Reese Jade here says, when I buy stuff, I also try to buy brands that are cruelty-free. I think that's been a really, like you said before, a big thing that's come into play.
It's really huge. I mean, I think for me, I had kind of a crisis earlier this year where I was like, where do I buy socks that I'm not paying $100 a pair for that I can feel good about buying? I still haven't found them.
There's certain things, and for me as well, I've kind of when you're at a place where you're able to like really consider that, of course, everyone's situation is different.
Sure.
And so you have to fit what works with you and your lifestyle. But if you're in a place where you like are able to work within that and you want to, it's really great. I think that's a great thing to do to help contribute in whatever way you can. I personally am also trying to find brands that I'm really big on,
Right.
you know, so that I like their style, but also their kind of, what do I want to say? Their motto, their sort of ethical, you know, their ethics and whatnot. So I'm still, if you guys have any you recommend, send it to our Instagram page. I'd love to hear from you guys. Now, we also have a message here from Jamenism. Jamenism says, so we have vegan versions of meat as well?
Yes, there are vegan versions of meat, and they are getting better year by year. I think one of the reasons why veganism has really kind of come back into the conversation as of a couple of years ago, there are a couple of really great brands out there that are making, especially now, ground beef patties or like vegan versions of those. We can't say the names, of course, but let's call one of them 불가능한 버거.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. That's good.
Right. So there are a couple of brands out there. Most of them are coming out of the UK and the US. Some of them are available here in Korea now. And you know, these are burger patties that they bleed when they're cooked medium rare, and they're just absolute wonders of science. I've tried them on my own, and they're fantastic. While they don't necessarily simulate the flavor of ground beef perfectly, it tastes like meat. Like if you told me that this was some meat I'd never had, told me that this was emu meat, I might believe you. I actually could believe you.
Emu. Where did you pull the emu from?
I've had emus on the mind. Don't ask. Don't ask. It's been a thing.
Of course.
I'm dealing with it. I'm dealing with it day by day.
We serve emu here, of course. Like, don't you get that
Right.
regularly?
But I mean, these companies now they're branching out. They're launching things like vegan pork substitutes, and they're slowly developing them. Kind of like substitute meat by substitute meat. And we're kind of like a far cry from where we were before, where it was kind of all just based off of, say, things like wheat gluten.
Yes.
Right. So here's just kind of a quick thing, right? So like meat is proteins, right? And proteins they're these like strands. And if you kind of think about them like on like the kind of like almost like microscopic level, right? Like you can kind of simulate that with other proteins. And that's kind of like the first wave of vegan, foods
products,
right?
yeah.
So they would take like things like seitan, which is the protein that's found in wheat.
Not to be confused with Satan.
No. Although if you've had bad versions of it, it's easy to confuse. And you kind of fold it over and you kind of like stretch it out, fold it over, stretch it out. You could imagine like a stringy chicken breast, right? You could kind of simulate something like that.
Like the tearing of like meat and things like that. Yeah.
But now we're at a point where in like super sophisticated laboratories, they can put together like these like soy-based proteins that are in different shapes other than just strands, so to speak. Wow. So it just kind of, it gets that texture factor down a lot more.
Which I think is big for a lot of people.
It's huge, which is why they started with ground beef. It's much more difficult, I think, to try to create an artificial steak.
Yes.
Because, it's something that's, that was created in nature, is hard to replicate. But ground beef, it's something that's a little bit simpler if you think about it.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, for me, I guess this isn't as high tech. I'm still just happy with, black bean patties and things like that. Those are great. I love them.
And I think that's the other category of meat substitutes, is that things that don't even try to be like meat, but they come in those kind of meat formats.
Yeah.
Right. So like a burger patty, but a patty that's not made out of meat at all, but just different vegetables and grains. I love them. I lived off of them in college because to me, a frozen vegetable vegetable patty tastes much better than a frozen beef patty.
Yeah.
And if I'm busy, I'm in college, I don't have a ton of money. If I just need to run home, throw something in a pan, and just shove it in my face, I lived off those things for years. Like vegan, vegetable patties, yogurt, and granola.
There you have it, you guys.
That's how we
the
survived
college
college.
life of Matt here. Vegan vegetable patties, yogurt, and granola. That's all you need here. Now, we have a great message from 현지 최. It says, 한국어천재만 오면 심해지는 배고픔. 그쵸? Matt, you always talk about things in such a delicious way that even I get hungry here when I'm listening to you
I'm
talk.
doing my job.
But Rumi has a comment. Vegan food tastes bland, though. I see you take issue.
You know
I
what
take
tastes
issue.
bland? Poorly prepared foods.
There you go. Yeah.
Poorly prepared meat tastes bland. Poorly prepared vegan food tastes bland. I think that, especially with vegan food, if you're pumping up things like the acid with things like citrus and vinegars, or if you're fermenting them from a long period of time, some of my favorite dishes here in Korea are dishes that can be made vegan from start to finish. If you go to temples, they every year when they do kimjang, they do vegan kimchis there. So they don't put like 멸치액 or 새우젓. They don't put any of the fermented seafood that traditionally goes into kimchi. Instead, what they'll generally tend to do is they'll make this kind of very flavorful stock out of things like 표고버섯, things like 단호박. And they'll add like a little bit of extra of that like chapsar pur to kind of like up that fermentation. But these are recipes that have been like passed down, and they do them year by year. And they're able to make these incredible, completely vegan kimchis because at the end of the day, what's really giving kimchi its flavor is that fermentation process.
Yes. Yeah, it's just that kind of vinegary, tangy flavor that comes through the long periods of time that it's sitting there, right?
Right.
And I feel like I've actually had not a temple stay. It was like a 체험, kind of like an experience, I guess. You just go, I went for an afternoon, but I got to try some of their foods there. And it was so well prepared. And I never felt it was bland. I just felt like they emphasized certain flavors, whether it be like this kind of grilled sort of flavor or these kind of starchy flavors that they really would kind of level it up with, little spices or things like that they would throw in. My favorite thing is to just heat things up. I love spicy food. I am a huge spice eater. 저 매운 거 잘 먹는 편이에요. I am very nice at this. But if you get some veggies, and even if you just throw in some like little flakes of pepper and stuff, it can elevate it to and that's the simplest thing you can do.
Right. Spiciness, acidity. And of course, we talked about this before when we're talking about Korean food abroad. The three kind of main flavor components of Korean cuisine, the changs, 간장, 된장, gochujang, are by its very nature, they're vegan.
That's true. Yeah, they are. And so, I feel like you need to make a band called the Changs, by the way, because, and you all need to change your names to that. So have three people and one person can be gochujang, one person be 된장, and this can be a thing.
So basically the Korean Spice Girls.
Yes. Oh my God, the Korean Spice Girls. This is amazing. This is fiction, or this is fact now. We've made this from fiction to fact. Bujeni here has something really interesting. Have you guys heard about watermelon meat? They grill watermelon like a meat, and it looks like meat visually. Watermelon meat?
Yeah, you see this a lot in kind of like fine dining restaurants or vegan cafes will do this. Just because if you take a block, it's red, it's kind of juicy. If you put it on a grill and you give it like a hard sear, it can kind of look like like a piece of seared tuna or beef. I think I like watermelon in my savory food, like especially like in a salad with maybe some like feta or goat cheese in there, or if like a pickled watermelon rind. I do have a little bit of an issue when watermelon is served hot. But I've had successful versions of this watermelon meat where they took the time to like grill it and then chill it back down again, so that it gets like crispy and refreshing and juicy again. It doesn't taste like meat.
Okay, thank you.
It visually looks like meat.
This is what I'm like, I cannot process in my head how a watermelon could taste like meat in any way. I'm like, visually, yes.
It's not like you cook it and all of a sudden, it tastes like chicken.
Yeah, I'm just like, I was really struggling there. I'm like, you're losing me here, Matt. But the cool thing about this is that each year these kind of new things keep coming out. And a lot of the reasons is you can find them at festivals or exhibitions and all these places. I feel like Korea is having more and more festivals coming up to kind of share and expose and like,
Right.
you know, kind of, what do I want to say? 홍보. What is that? Like give like PR sort of
Yeah,
that
they
sort
just
of thing?
kind of like, spread the word, spread awareness. There are, I think, more than one vegan festivals here in Korea that go on every year. There's one that we go to. I think it's been a couple of years, maybe even 5 since they've started it. And it's fantastic. We take our dog out. We make our whole afternoon out of it. We run into like a ton of people that we know. We run into a lot of people who we wouldn't assume would be interested in vegan cuisine as well. But just because it is gaining so much steam,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people want to go. It's like, oh, let's see what this is about.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people will know somebody who is serving something at this vegan festival.
Yeah.
Some people who might be chefs who don't necessarily have a vegan restaurant, but it's something that they're into, and there's like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to try this out, for me to kind of like see like, hey, can I do this? Can I make something that people will enjoy? And they're always packed. And it's not only food, and the food is often delicious. Not
yeah.
always, but the delicious, like I've had some really memorable, dishes from these vegan festivals, but they also sell things like responsibly sourced, like clothing made from like textiles. And they're great. I'd love to see what the future of this is going to look like in the next couple of years, because where we are right now, I think is exactly where we should be.
Oh, yeah. And see, I hope we kind of answered a lot of your questions here. If you guys have any more questions for Matt or for myself, please feel free to send us a message. We'll be sure to check it out. And Matt, thank you so much for coming in again.
It's always a pleasure.